doing. When I think about how when I was born, I couldn't breathe. And my aunt saw me in the NICU and said, that child can't breathe, right? I don't have any recollection of that happening, but to hear that story and recount that story even from birth, to know that God was working in that moment because my aunt saw me and said, that baby can't breathe.
I want to share a time where I the first time that I I was sure. It's like so the first time I heard God's voice, and there were a couple of things that like was leading up to it, but when I was sure, and it kind of like has to do with the word. So I had like a conflict with a friend, and I had always heard I was very new in my faith, and I had always heard that you're supposed to handle things as a Christian like biblically. And one of the things that it talks about in Romans to do is when your enemy is hungry, you give them something to eat. When they're thirsty, you give them something to drink. And I really wanted to be petty and like not, basically love the person instead of, be petty. Like I really wanted to, retaliate. But I didn't, and in, after those verses, it says, in doing this, you'll heap burning coals on their head. And back in those times, it was a sign of repentance. So like they would put coals on their heads to symbolize, just being repentant or a change of heart. Right. And so I was like, okay, Lord, like I'm going to, instead of yielding to my flesh and operating out of offense or pettiness, I'm going to take this time to do what you say. I'm going to walk by faith. And I'm going to read this, and I'm going to believe that if I still love this person, if I still treat them with kindness and respect and everything like that, that they're going to be led to repentance. And so I prayed Romans 12, 9 through 21 for 3 days straight. And on that third day, the person reached out to me and apologized to me. And so that's when I knew that I felt confident that handling things biblically and taking God at his word is true, and so after that, I began to kind of exercise that muscle and, just align my life, in every area. It gave me the confidence to, move to this area and this area and this area. And I knew that God was faithful. So yeah, I'd say that was the time.
No, that's good. So, because it's good, so many things to take away from it. Like, some of us are at a place where we understand the word, but then we might know the word. We might know certain scriptures. We might know that it says that we're supposed to be kind to even our enemies, right? But there's a place where faith is required, where it says, I read the word that says, if my enemy is hungry, get him something to eat. I read the word that says, if my enemy is thirsty, get him something to drink. But where faith is required is there's a gap between I understand the word and then I have to actually do the word. Yeah. And you pray for 3 days before seeing it come to pass. Mm-hmm. So there's a gap of like, I did what you said, Lord. Is your word not true? Is your word like, I've been praying for 3 days.
Yeah.
And so faith is required, but your consistency in prayer is the substance of what you hope for, mm-hmm. which is that the word is true. Mm-hmm. And so there's a place that you get to where you know the word and you know it's true for yourself, but there's different types of knowledge. But there's a knowledge of, I know 2 + 2 is 4. I know it. But then there's a knowledge that comes with experience. Now you have an experiential knowledge with God that says, I've seen what you've done. I've seen what your word says. I tried it. I tested it. And now I've seen it come to pass. So now I know that your word is true. Gnosko is the word that means to intimately know. So that's really pretty dope. Yeah. Jay?
Yeah, I'm sitting here trying to think of like when, because I grew up in church. And so there was never a moment where I didn't necessarily believe in God. I may have walked away or been drifted away from church, the institution of church, but there was never a moment in time where I didn't believe in God. But when it became real to me was actually, it's a little bit different. So it's not like a aha moment, like, oh, God is real. It was more of a reflective moment in terms of looking back over the course of my life to be able to understand that God was working in and through my life all that time. Right. So it wasn't like, it was, wait, when I think about this moment, this is what God was doing. When I think about how when I was born, I I couldn't breathe. And my aunt saw me in the NICU and said, that child can't breathe, right? I don't have any recollection of that happening, but to hear that story and recount that story even from birth, to know that God was working in that moment, because my aunt saw me and said, that baby can't breathe. My nephew can't breathe, and goes to get the nurse or whoever to tell them that they have to hook me up to different machines, and I stay in the hospital all that time, to even growing up now, to not going to church. Well, from there, preaching at 3 years old, like after we went to church, and being the little child that I probably would have went viral if social media was around back then, because I was preaching a message and stuff like that, right? To FCA, being in middle school, being voted the captain of FCA, when I was like, how in the world, I don't even go to church on Sundays. Like, how is this happening? Right. But out of that, and just seeing like the breadcrumbs that God had been dropping all throughout my life, and then taking a look back and saying, oh no, God, I see what you was doing the whole time. So now it's like, it's not a surprise to some people that watched me from birth to see the faith and the belief that I have now. But it took me coming to the knowledge of, oh no, God's been doing these things all along. And like you said, having that encounter, that personal encounter, to know, or him just saying, think about this time. When you think about these moments, I was right there. That position, that place, that person that came into your life, that was me. That was me speaking to you through that person or through that thing, to let you know that I've been here the whole time.
That's good. My experience is similar, bro. Like, I grew up, in church, in a Christian household. I'm a product of the word that says, train up a child in the way that they should go, and they will not depart from it. So it wasn't a moment where I had to say, like, let me find my right. But there's a process, an ongoing process of saying, how can this word become true in my life? Because a lot of us, you'll be surprised at the amount of people that know head knowledge, the Bible. There's college professors that know the Bible. They teach theology. They can quote to you the Bible from front to back. They know it. But if you ask them if they believe if God can do miracles today, they'll say no. And so it's like, wait a sec. How can you read the Bible, know it, you got verses memorized, you know what it says, he did, and then also in the same breath say, God doesn't do miracles anymore? It's a different level of knowledge and so for me, that was the thing for me, is growing my faith in how do I actually believe this word, and to the point that I'm transformed by it. Right? It says, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That was where my faith had to be growing. Like, how do I get to a point where it's like, I know what it says. I know your word says we can heal people. I know your word says we can cast out demons. Like, how do I get there to the point where it's like, I actually see what I read about in my own life?